February 20th, 1943, north of the Sherman Pass. The dust rose in thick, rolling sheets as German Panzer IVs dug into firing positions overlooking the broken Tunisian terrain. But what they witnessed that morning was not the clumsy, disorganized, inexperienced American armor they expected. Instead, they saw something unnatural. 5 M4 Shermans, separated by ridgelines, wadis, and shattered ground, advanced with precision that violated everything German armor doctrine said was possible without visual contact. No signal flags, no runners, no colored flares. Yet the tanks moved as if controlled by a single mind. Each covered the other's blind spots. Each shifted position in perfect timing. Each reacted instantly to unseen threats. Panzer Commander Oberleutnant Hans Richter later told interrogators, "It was like watching one tank split into 5 bodies. The Germans assumed it was coincidence, or luck, or perhaps pre-battle planning. They were wrong. What they were seeing was something the Wehrmacht had never encountered. Backhand index pointing right, a fully networked armor formation. Backhand index pointing right, every tank in constant, clear contact. Backhand index pointing right, a battlefield intelligence organism. And the Germans had no idea how it was happening. The invisible weapon the Germans never saw coming. Through his headphones, Richter heard nothing but static and garbled screams as the company commander tried to coordinate. The German Fug 5 AM radio, the pride of the 1930s, was collapsing under engine noise, movement, and terrain interference. Transmission range, on paper 2 to 3 kilometers, fell to a few hundred meters the moment the tanks moved. Even worse, only the platoon leader's tank had a transmitter. The other 4 tanks had receivers only. They could listen but not speak. This meant no tank could report enemy armor. No one could call for help. No coordination was possible if the leader was hit. If the lead panzer died, the whole platoon went blind. And the Americans had learned this weakness. German radio doctrine had worked in 1940 against uncoordinated Allied forces. But now, facing American FM-equipped tanks, it was a death sentence. The Americans were using technology the Germans did not know existed. Inside the Shermans, communication was so clear it felt unreal. Tank commanders heard engine RPM, gun orders, flank reports, enemy spotting, artillery calls, platoon adjustments, all in real time, without static, without interference. The Germans didn't understand the truth yet. The Americans weren't using amplitude modulation at all. They were using FM. Frequency, modulation, crystal controlled. 25 watts of clean, stable transmission. It cut through engine noise, explosions, electrical interference, terrain distortion, multiple simultaneous conversations, as if slicing through fog with a blade. To German ears, this capability bordered on science fiction. How the American network was born and why Motorola changed warfare forever. The transformation of American armor had begun far from any battlefield. Round pushpin, July 22, 1941, Galvin Manufacturing Company, Motorola, Dan Noble, Henrik Magnusky, and a small engineering team produced what German intelligence completely missed. Backhand index pointing right, the SCR 508 FM radio network, a 181-pound assembly of transmitters, dual receivers, power filters, and crystal stabilizers, rugged enough to survive tank shock, and precise enough to maintain frequency lock for days. Specs the Germans did not believe were possible. 25-watt transmitter output, 10 crystal-controlled preset channels, dual receivers monitoring 2 nets at once, FM clarity immune to static, range 10 to 15 miles stationary, 7 miles moving. Germany's Fug 5 by comparison, 10-watt power, no crystals, manual tuning, severe frequency drift, range 0.5 to 1 mile moving. The Americans had turned the tank into a node. The Germans had built a tank that was alone. The first real test, Operation Torch, November 1942. When American armor landed in North Africa, the German Afrika Korps, battle-hardened, experienced, lethal, expected confusion and chaos. But instead, they intercepted radio traffic that sounded impossibly calm. German signals intelligence noted, American transmissions are exceptionally clear. Their units appear to coordinate beyond line of sight. This moment, that first intercept, should have triggered alarm bells in Berlin. It did not. Wehrmacht analysts concluded, it must be extensive training. It must be discipline. It must be luck. They had no idea that American radios eliminated the chaos German tankers believed was inevitable. The Battle of Kasserine, a German tactical victory, a strategic warning. February 1943. Kasserine Pass. Germany won the battle, but what they observed terrified them. U.S. armored elements, scattered across 50 miles, communicated like a single organism. Tanks warning each other of ambushes. Platoons coordinating without visual contact. Artillery called instantly. Infantry supported across ridge lines. German intelligence officers intercepted the transmissions and recorded something unprecedented. Enemy tank units communicated at distances where our radios produce only static. And the worst realization, every American tank can transmit, not just a command tank. This was not how armored warfare worked. Not in 1943. Not for Germany. Not for anyone. The Americans had quietly and decisively entered a new era. Italy 1943 to 1944, where the radio advantage became a superpower. In the jagged mountains of Italy, where cliffs swallowed sound and valleys distorted every transmission, the American FM networks revealed their true strength. German AM communications, already fragile in Tunisia, became nearly useless in Italy. The Fug 5 radio struggled with echo distortion in valleys, severe frequency drift in cold mornings, engine interference magnified by thin mountain air, static on steep slopes, fading signals during movement. German tank units routinely lost contact after 300 to 400 meters. Meanwhile, U.S. Sherman spoke to each other clearly across different ridge lines, opposite sides of mountains, 8 to 10 kilometers distances, while moving at full speed. Panzer Commander Otto Carius later admitted, American units maneuver with a cohesion that seemed impossible. We blamed their numbers, but it was their radios. The battlefield had become a chessboard, and only one side could see the whole board, the tank. Infantry telephone. The Germans could not believe this existed. In Italy, American infantry units began discovering a new device on the back of many Shermans, a headphone wired directly into the tank's internal intercom. It was revolutionary. Infantry could walk up to the rear hull, pick up the handset, and instantly speak to the tank commander, the gunner, the driver, the entire platoon. No flares, no shouting, no runners, no hand signals. Just a soldier pressing a button and saying, target at 11 o'clock, second house, machine gun in the window. And the tank responded within seconds. German infantry were stunned when they discovered captured Shermans with these telephones. One report read, American infantry directs tanks with telephone devices. This is beyond our capability. The German alternative? Shouting, waving, hand signals, desperate attempts to get a tank's attention under fire. The U.S. Army had solved the infantry armor coordination problem with a $15 handset. June 1944, the SCR 508 changes the course of the Normandy breakout. When the Americans landed in France, German commanders assumed the hedgerows would give them a natural advantage. Bocage country was a fortress, a maze of earthen walls, choking visibility, trapping tanks in narrow kill zones. But USFM radios turned the hedgerows into highways of information. Sherman crews warned each other of ambushes, coordinated flanking maneuvers through unseen gaps, called an artillery in seconds, spotted machine gun nests for infantry, hunted German armor with wolf pack tactics, maneuvered without visual contact. German tankers inside Panthers and Tigers were horrified. They thought they were fighting scattered American units. Instead, they were fighting a synchronized swarm. A Panzerlehr officer reported, the enemy appears to know our positions before we fire. They're tanks moving groups we cannot see, but who strike simultaneously. That wasn't magic. It was the SCR 508, the secret of American artillery speed, radio fusion. German units in Normandy repeatedly recorded the same nightmare. German tank fires one shell. Within 90 seconds, American artillery lands on its position. Infantry retreats. Vehicles reverse. Entire position is smothered in fire. It wasn't luck. It was FM network fusion. Every Sherman had instant access to artillery fire direction, forward observers, platoon nets, battalion nets, air support channels, engineer units, supply columns. Germany had none of this. A Tiger needed a runner, a field phone, a wireline, or visual contact to call for fire, which meant it effectively never happened. Operation Cobra. The day FM radios broke Panzer Lair. July 25, 1944. Operation Cobra. The most devastating display of radio-enabled maneuver in World War II. After the air bombardment tore open German lines, American tank units executed a level of synchronized exploitation the Germans had never seen. Shermans bypassed resistance instantly, regrouped in minutes, leapfrogged other platoons, coordinated attacks over miles, called in P-47 strikes mid-maneuver, relayed enemy armor sightings instantly, shifted axes of advance with no delays. Panzer Lair, the elite formation, collapsed in 36 hours. Historian Stevens Aloga wrote, Cobra was not won by Sherman armor or American bravery alone. It was the radios. The Germans never grasped this at the time. One German prisoner from Panzer Lair summarized it perfectly. We fought tanks. They fought as a network. Germany's fatal logistical mismatch, radios versus tanks. Germany in 1944 faced a ridiculous imbalance. Tigers, expensive, rare. Panthers, complex, fragile. Radios, even more expensive and rarer. To build a Tiger required 300.000 working hours. Massive specialized facilities. To build a SCR 508 radio network required. Mass production. Cheap materials. American industry. Endless spare parts. Germany had fewer radios, worse radios, unreliable radios, no redundancy, no mass production. American armor battalions carried. Backhand index pointing right 1,200 radios per battalion. German battalions carried. Backhand index pointing right around 150 radios of inferior quality, many receiver only. The result? Germany fought with isolated steel giants. America fought with connected steel groups. And warfare favors information, not armor. Why the Sherman was deadly in packs, and the Panther was alone. Panther crews often entered battle with a sense of invincibility. They believed in their armor. They believed in their guns. They believed in their training. But they lacked one thing the Americans had turned into a science: the ability to talk. Instantly, clearly, simultaneously, without static. The German model of armored warfare, built on aggressive initiative, discipline, and doctrine, simply could not survive in the face of a force that could coordinate with the speed of thought. In Normandy, the Shermans began using wolfpack tactics. 3 tanks attack frontally. 2 swing wide through hedgerow gaps. 1 calls artillery. All maintain constant radio contact. The Panther's superior gun and armor didn't matter if it was flanked, it was tracked, it was surprised, it was outmaneuvered. It couldn't call for help. As a German tanker bitterly put it, our tanks were lions, theirs were wolves, and wolves hunt in packs. Fog, smoke, shellfire, the environment where AM radios died. Warfare destroys communication faster than it destroys armor. Battlefield chaos meant smoke from artillery, dust from tanks, fog in mornings, static from engines, trees blocking signals, explosions interrupting waves. The American FM radios cut through everything. The German AM radios died in everything. When artillery hit, German radios turned into crackling static, distorted voices, Lost signals. Useless noise. American FM transmissions remained. Crisp, audible, unbroken, reliable, even under bombardment. The SCR-508 allowed U.S. tankers to speak normally. This difference, almost invisible to civilians, was the most lethal advantage in armored engagements. The Battle of the Bulge, the radio war inside a wideout, December 1944. The Ardennes, the worst winter in decades. Visibility, 10 meters. Fog, suffocating. Snow, blinding. Direction, impossible to judge. For the German tanks, this meant catastrophe. Their AM radios failed almost completely. Signals drowned in storm noise. Commanders couldn't contact their units. Transmissions degraded into static. Entire battalions fought blind. Panther commanders were reduced to shouting outside the turret, banging hulls with fists, sending runners through waist-high snow, trying to guess where their own units were. Meanwhile, American Shermans moved in coordinated formations through fog, maneuvered as if the battlefield were clear, called artillery and air strikes blind, used FM clarity to turn fog into cover. A German tanker later said, "In the Ardennes, we fought the weather, but the Americans fought us." The Sherman's deadly weapon, information, visibility in the Ardennes, could drop to nearly zero. But the Shermans operated like they had GPS decades before existed. Why? Because FM radio net control allowed platoon leaders to monitor 2 channels at once, tank commanders to correct friendly tanks blind, artillery to be called through radio triangulation, rear units to guide frontline tanks by sound, infantry to relay enemy positions via phone lines, engineers to warn of mines or ice traps. The Panther didn't simply lose due to armor or penetration. It lost because the Sherman always knew what was happening. The Panther never did. We die because we cannot speak. The testimony of Panzer crews. Captured German tankers repeatedly reported the same experience. They were ambushed by tanks they never saw. They were surrounded by units they never heard. They were destroyed without understanding how the enemy knew where they were. One Panther gunner said, "We died inside armor thicker than theirs, but they had radios. We had silence." Another described encountering a Sherman platoon in fog. "We fired once. Before we reloaded, 7 Shermans surrounded us." That's what happens when every U.S. tank sees the battlefield. Every U.S. tank hears every message. Every U.S. tank can instantly act. And German tanks cannot transmit. German platoons lose contact immediately. German companies become isolated. Battalions disintegrate. This was not a technological edge. This was a battlefield evolution. The information war that Germany did not realize it had already lost. By late 1944, Germany still believed the Sherman was inferior. That belief killed thousands of German tankers. Because while Berlin praised armor thickness and gun length, the Americans quietly built a battlefield internet, a real-time communication grid, a distributed command network, a multi-layered fire control ecosystem. The SCR-508, SCR-528, and infantry SCR-300 created the first digitally coordinated battlefield before computers existed. Germany never understood this. America perfected it. The truth of radio warfare in World War II. A Sherman with a 75mm gun plus full radio net was deadlier than a Panther with an 88mm gun plus broken communications. A Sherman platoon with FM was deadlier than a Tiger platoon with AM. A Sherman battalion with 1,200 radios was deadlier than a Panzer battalion with 150 radios. A tank is not a weapon. A tank network is. The moment tank battles were decided before they even began. By 1944, U.S. armor doctrine had evolved into something entirely new. A tank battle no longer began with the first shot. It began with the first radio call, the first spotted enemy position, the first artillery triangulation, the first reconnaissance report. In other words, Backhand index pointing right, he who spoke first, won. Backhand index pointing right, he who heard most, survived. Backhand index pointing right, he who shared information, dominated. Sherman units often knew where the Panthers were, what direction they were coming from, how many there were, what they were trying to flank, which positions were strong or weak, where to call artillery, where to ambush, where to retreat, all before the Germans even realized American armor was in the area. This was not because the Sherman was superior. It was because American tankers were connected, like neurons of a single organism. The Panther was a muscle. The Sherman platoon was a brain. The artillery revolution, when radio turned shells into guided power. American artillery in World War II is often praised as the best in the world. What most people don't know is why. It wasn't the guns. It wasn't the shells. It wasn't the crews. It was the radios. A Sherman commander could see German armor, radio a fire request, give coordinates, adjust the salvo, redirect fire mid-battle, coordinate with infantry and engineers, all within 90 seconds. German units wrote terrified reports. American artillery reacts instantly. It arrives before our own reports reach headquarters, because their own messages had to move through runners, field telephones, cable lines, headquarters delay, transmission back to batteries. By the time German artillery fired, the U.S. tanks had already moved. The U.S. had invented the first real-time fire control system in history, and it was all built on FM radios. Air power plus radios equals the death of armored warfare as Germany knew it. The SCR 508 and SCR 300 became the bridge between tank crews and the sky. A Sherman could call P-47 Thunderbolts, P-51 Mustangs, rocket strikes, strafing runs, close air support, all while fighting. German tankers often described the same nightmare. A Panther would take a shot, miss, reverse, smoke, and suddenly, American aircraft arrived as if summoned from thin air, because they were summoned by radio. The Luftwaffe was no longer the dominant force in air-ground coordination. The Americans were, and the Germans had no counter. The final collapse, 1945, and the death of German communications. By 1945, the German army fought almost completely blind. Fuel crisis, catastrophic. Vehicle breakdowns, constant. Radio production, near zero. Many late-war Panthers and Tigers reached the front with radios missing, radios broken, radios removed for parts, no spare tubes, no technicians, no batteries. Tank commanders were forced to wave flags, shout across fields, fire signal pistol flares, send motorcycle messengers, rely on hand gestures, run between tanks under fire. In contrast, American armored divisions were essentially mobile information networks, capable of reacting, planning, striking, retreating, and hunting with full situational awareness. German tankers described the final months as fighting shadows with blindfolds on. The central truth: World War II was not won by armor or guns, but by networks. For decades, the world has debated Sherman versus Panther, 75 millimeters versus 88 millimeters, armor angles, penetration tables, horsepower, speed. But this was never the real story. Wars are not won by machines. They are won by systems. And the American system, built on radios, networks, logistics, fuel, and communication, was something the Germans had never prepared for. The Sherman was not a tank. It was a node. A Panther was a masterpiece of engineering. A single, isolated predator. A Sherman platoon was a coordinated pack, in constant communication, connected to artillery, connected to infantry, connected to engineers, connected to aircraft, connected to command, connected to each other. German tankers said it best. We fought tanks. They fought as an army. Epilogue: the weapon that rewrote warfare forever. After the war, American military historians and German generals both came to the same conclusion. The best weapon the U.S. had in World War II was not a gun, not a tank, not a plane, but communication. FM radios created, the first networked armor, the first real-time battlefield, the first combined arms system, the first information-centric warfare doctrine. This was modern war, decades before anyone had the language to describe it. A Panther could outshoot a Sherman. A Tiger could out-armor Sherman. But a Sherman battalion could outcommunicate the entire Panzerwaffe. And that's why America won. In the end, German tanks were stronger, but American tanks were connected. And connection beats power. Every single time.